Good morning everybody. Welcome to Gyan Parab. Today we are going to discuss the second part of Gynocentricism. Slide please. One of the important tasks done by gynocritics is to retrieve old texts written by women writers. With the passage of time, many women writers were forgotten. They were lost in the passage of time in the history of feminist criticism. The important task done by gynocritics is they tried to find out the lesser well-known women writers, and then they were retrieved. Slide please. They retrieved the old text written by women writers and then they placed them in the respective place in the literary canon. One of the examples is Afra Ben. Afra Ben is forgotten, but because of with the help of gynocritics, Afra Ben, now we are aware with the name Afra Ben, and she is the first women writer. She is the first woman novelist. Slide please. What gynocritics do? Gynocritics, by retrieving old texts written by women writers, put them in the proper place, put them in the literary canon, and then they filled the gaps in the history of tradition, because the whole history of tradition was created by men, and women writers tried to find out the old text, the text written by women writers, and then they put them at the respective place, and in this way they filled the gaps in the history of literary tradition. And in this way they rediscovered lesser known women authors and their works, as I have told the example of Afra Ben. And the result is many unknown women authors came into limelight. So the task of retrieving old texts written by women is very important to understand the gynocentric theory. It gave many women writers respective position in the literary canon. This is very important. The gynocritics are in search of white ink that can answer to the blue ink of men writers or the blue ink of patriarchal culture. Women writers in gynocentrism does not want to fight against patriarchy. They does not want to rebel against patriarchy, but by finding white ink, they wanted to establish their identity. They wanted to raise their own voice. They wanted to find out or create their own space, their own place in the patriarchal cultures. So in this way, the women writers are in search of white ink that can answer the blue ink of men. Now if we look at the theory of gynocentrism, the whole theory of gynocentrism is divided into four parts. We can call it the pillars of gynocentrism, and the pillars or the models of gynocentrism are four, on which the whole theory of gynocentrism is built up. And all these four pillars define and differentiate the qualities of women writing. And these four pillars are biological, linguistic, psychoanalytical, and cultural. These are the four pillars. Once again I am repeating. The four pillars are biological, linguistic, psychoanalytical, and cultural. Now these four pillars represent different aspects of women's life. For example, the first pillar or the first model is biological, which gives importance to women's body, how women's body is reflected in women's writing. That is important in the first aspect, that is important in the first pillar. The second is linguistic aspect. Now in the linguistic aspect, women's language is important, how women's language is reflected in women's writing. And in the third pillar, psychoanalytical, women's psyche is reflected in the third pillar. And in the fourth pillar, culture, where woman's sociological position is reflected. Once again I am repeating. In the first pillar, biological, first pillar we can also call it the model. In the first model, biological, woman's body or physicality is important. Linguistic, woman's language is important. Psychoanalytical, women's psyche is important. and cultural means woman's sociological position is important. So all these four models represent different aspects of women's life. The first one is women's writing and woman's body. Now here the title Women's Writing and Woman's Body is taken from Ellen Showalter's article or essay Feminist Criticism in the Wilderness. In that essay, Ellen Showalter has discussed in detail these four models or four pillars by giving four titles, and the first title is Women's Writing and Woman's Body, and it emphasizes biological aspect of women. Naturally, both man and women are biologically different, and therefore their experiences are also different. Man has different biological organs, woman has different biological organs, and these different biological organs have different experiences. So it's very true that both man and women are biologically different, and so their experiences are also different. But it doesn't mean that the woman's biological experiences are inferior to man's biological experiences. There are some special areas or special experiences of female body. For example, pregnancy, childbirth, lactation, and menstruation. So these are some special experiences of female body which may not be understood by men or man's body. In the same way, there are some special experiences of male's body. For example, their beard, moustaches, and their stronger muscles. So their different bodily experiences lead to separate socio-cultural roles in the society. In the Indian culture or in the patriarchal society, the role of a woman is housewife, the role of a man is different. His role is out of the house, while the woman's role is in the house. So their different bodily experiences gave them different socio-cultural roles in the society. This is very important. Man is physically strong, so it is believed that man has a superior status in the society. Woman is physically weak, so it is believed that woman has inferior status in the society. Now what gynocritics do? Gynocritics tried to remove this concept. They rejected the idea that men are biologically strong, so they are superior, and women are biologically weak, so they are inferior. So gynocritics reject the idea of superiority and inferiority. Slide please. Even some male critics also believe that women are born with lesser developed cognitive organs, so they are lower in intelligence. This is very important to understand that here they connect woman's body with their intelligence, but it is not so. Women are born with lesser developed cognitive organs. It doesn't mean that their intelligence is also lower. So gynocritics rejected this concept also. What they felt that women's bodily organs are lesser developed, so they are unable to write. Even they also think that women are unable to think properly. And so the literature produced by a woman is inferior. So this is the concept of male critics given to the society, that the literature produced by women writer is inferior because women are biologically weak, women are biologically inferior. So when the gynocritics comes, they reject this biological inferiority. They said that there is not the question of superiority and inferiority in the biological area. Gynocritics believe that women's body and their experiences are immense source of energy and power for female writers. So women's bodily experiences, they have women's bodily experiences enrich their writing. They also think that they are responsible for the enrichment of women's literature. So women's body is not inferior at all, but women's body is an immense source of inspiration to the writers. This is the concept of gynocritics. Their biological experiences, what gynocritics believe, women's biological experiences are extremely enriching, fulfilling, and satisfying. So the difference between male body and female body should not be shameful, but something to celebrate. This is very important to understand the gynocentric theory, because what gynocritics say that women's bodily difference should not be shameful to the woman, but woman has to celebrate this bodily difference, and if she celebrates this bodily difference, then she may create her own space in the patriarchal society. She may create her own place in the patriarchal society. So once again I am repeating, women's bodily experiences are extremely enriching and fulfilling for the female writers. Slide please. So women should be proud to be women. This is the essence of biological aspect of women's writing. The second title or the second model on which the theory of gynocentrism is developed is women's writing and women's language. In this model, women's language is important. Women's language is in the center. The problems of language faced by women in the patriarchal society is reflected in this category, because man has different linguistic areas, woman has different linguistic areas. Even they also said that woman is biologically different from male, so the language created by male is also different. Even in the patriarchal society, the language is created by male writers. So whatever the woman speak, she has to follow the tradition of language created by male writers. So the gynocritics wants to represent the problems of language faced by women in the patriarchal society. Even women does not have right to speak in the patriarchal society, and gynocritics favored or insisted that women at least should learn to ask questions, women at least should learn to speak, women at least should learn to say something about herself, to express her feelings and emotions in the patriarchal society. And if she speaks, then she can create her own place. In the patriarchal society, women are deprived of the essence of expression. Women has not right to speak. Women has not right to write. So they are always deprived of the essence of speak. Whatever they speak what man desires, and that is the hindrance in the theory of gynocentrism. This is very important because when a man writer writes, we can call him a writer. But when a woman writer writes, we can label her as a woman writer. Why? Because perhaps it is also believed that man has the authority to speak, and woman's role is only confined to the four walls of the house. She has not even right to raise her voice. She has not even right to speak about herself. So when a man writer writes, he is included in the literary canon and he is called a writer only. But when a woman writer writes, she is called or she is labeled as a woman writer. We cannot call her a writer, but we can call her a woman writer. And gynocritics oppose this concept, the difference between a male writer and the female writer. They insisted that man is writing, woman is writing, both are the writers. Why there is the difference between man as a writer and woman as a woman writer? Slide please. Foucault said, what is true depends on who controls discourse. This statement is very much important to understand the language of women, to understand the situation of women in the patriarchal society. Because in the patriarchal society, who controls discourse? Naturally, man. And those who control society, they are true. And man controls the society, so whatever man speaks, it is true. And whatever the woman speaks, it's not true. So feminism is a struggle for the right to speak and write. From the last 2 centuries, feminism is constantly struggling for the right to speak and write, because women does not have essence of speech and right. This is very important. Language is connected with the knowledge, and knowledge is stamped with the father's signature, so it cannot be reached by a woman. It is deprived by the woman, because language is connected with knowledge. And the patriarchal society or the patriarchal culture thought that knowledge is only and only related or connected with the father's signature, because in the patriarchal society only the father has the knowledge. So women are deprived of knowledge. Now what gynocritics do? Gynocritics tried to modify the language. Up till now, the language was thrust on women, that language which was created by men. Gynocritics tried to modify the language. Gynocritics tried to create such type of language in which women have freedom to speak and write. Even they also refute the idea of genderlect. Now gynocritics are in search of that kind of language which is not oppressive. When the male writer writes, naturally he writes the language of oppression. He always try to show the marginalized position of women in the patriarchal society. But now gynocritics are in search of that kind of language where women can have their own place, women can have their own area from where they are not represented as oppressive. They do not leave women speechless. The patriarchal culture forced women to keep women speechless, but gynocritics wants to loosen their tongue. They want to release their speech so that women can freely express their desire and their ideas. So once again I am repeating, the important task in the field of language done by gynocritics is they are in search of language which is not oppressive. They do not leave women speechless. On the contrary, they wanted to loosen women's tongue. This is very important. In the patriarchal culture, if woman is silent, then she will be excluded from the history. She will be also excluded from the literary canon. She will be invisible and unheard sex. But if a woman speaks, then she will enter in the history. She will be heard and she will be visible. So gynocritics emphasized women to speak. Gynocritics emphasized women to raise her voice and learn to ask questions. The third point or the third model on which the whole theory of gynocentrism is discussed is women's writing and women's psyche. When women's psychological aspect is important,